Tuesday, February 23rd. Before we get started, I wanted to make a quick statement. Our city is pretty much family in terms of all the folks that work here together for a long time, and we really value everything our employees do. But it's very tragic to have to announce that we lost one of our employees, passed away this last week unexpectedly. So I wanted to do a brief moment for Tony Hayes and her remembrance. So if we can do a brief moment of silence before we start. Thank you. At this time, I wanted to invite Pastor Lord for our invocation.
Thank you, Mayor. Before into our 40 days of prayer, I will use this on praying for government leaders and our condolences to Tony Hayes, and we'll pray for her husband, Todd. Father, we thank you that government is of you, order is of you. So, Lord, tonight, your hand is upon people you pick to make those decisions. And so, Lord, we just want to pray for them and thank you, Lord, for them serving. We pray, Lord, that each of them would be an example of righteousness in the sphere of our society where they go, that they'll experience God's wisdom in all their deliberations. They'll speak and carry out dealings with truth. They won't hinder the service and worship of Jesus Christ, that they will come to know and honor and follow him and the wisdom and the peace that he stands for. And Lord, we do pray for the Hayes family and her husband Todd. Lord, we just thank you that you are the resurrection and life, and you made a way for those that know you. And Lord, tonight we lift up wisdom on the vessel parking in the yards, speeding concerns on old posts, Lord, that people would be satisfied, come to an understanding, and the US 19 lane closure. And Lord, give wisdom on the appeal of the demolition on Siesta Lane. And Father, we just want to thank you for our organizational meetings. And we just look to you, Father. Thank you for every employee. They are treasured, as the mayor had said. And Lord, just show favor to our first responders, Lord, our chiefs and our men, as they not only fight the things around in their job, but the virus and the fears that go with it. So, Lord, let your hand in blessing and peace and strength and deliverance rest upon our city, and help us tonight in Jesus' name.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to go do roll call and then announce whether we're here in person or virtually.
Mayor Scott Tremblay.
Here in person.
Vice Mayor William Dittmer. Let the record show that Vice Mayor William Dittmer is absent from tonight's meeting. Councilwoman Jenny Sorrell.
Here.
Councilman Todd McClary. Councilman Tom Kinsella.
Here.
City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager John Dude.
Here. And let the record reflect that Mr. Kinsella is here in person. And I wanted to make sure we have 3 here in person, 1 virtually, and 1 absent. No issues with quorum?
No, sir.
Okay. With that, I wanted to move on to see if there was a motion to approve council minutes.
Motion to approve the council minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 At this time, we're going to move on to comments from the general public. I'm going to start with Pastor Lord, and then I'm going to take hands after that, just from the general public.
Leonard Lord, I pastored 8114 Leo Kidd Avenue, and thanks to the city, a chaplain here. I just want to remind you, we are in our 40 days of prayer, so if you have any particular prayer needs, we just want to be avail to those, and send our condolences again to losing Tony Hayes. Also, I just want to thank the city for their support in serving the community, particularly as you might say Christians or those that just want to represent the peace and love of God. So I want to thank the city and y'all to allowing us to have the Easter egg hunt. We're working on that now, and that will be the 3rd of April in Waterfront Park. I particularly want to thank our city manager, as he just has opened himself up when we need to get with him for things for the city, that he's been available. I appreciate his wisdom and time, and thank you, sir. Also, right now, they are doing free taxes at the church, and that's headed up by one of Mr. Colombo, if that can be of service. They needed our grounds, and that's good. Just upcoming things, we usually always do the backpack giveaway before school. That's a whole city area thing, well, all around through the churches. And I know one year, one of the business people helped us get most of the money, I think, for our backpacks. They're $10 a piece stuffed, so that'll be coming up in July. I'm just sharing ahead some of the things that we'll be getting ready. Also, the Kier Fest, the end of September, is when you unite the churches to do projects. So particularly, we've done them in parks, painting and cleaning and so forth, available for that. And then ever how we can serve at Christmas again. And that's it. Just always excited to be able to do something good and encourage everybody and bring the city together to serve one another. Thank you, Mayor, Council, and everybody, and Lord bless you.
Thank you, Pastor Lord. I see a couple other people signed up that are actually should be with boards and committees. So I want to take anyone else who wants to speak before we move on to the boards and committees, those reports from members. Seeing no hands at this time, I'm going to go to boards and committees and then circle back to our city manager. So at this time, I'd like to welcome Linda Rodriguez.
Linda Rodriguez, 5917 Lantern Court. Just wanted to let everybody know, this Saturday, we're having a cleanup at Nick's Park at 9 o'clock, if you'd like to join us. We had a real good turnout for Olsner, and it worked out quite well. And we're also doing another Meet Your Neighbor, March 3rd, 5:30 to 7 at the Garage on Grand. Everybody's welcome to attend that as well. Okay. The Meet Your Neighbor, the 3rd, March 3rd, 5:30 to 7. Garage on Grand.
5:30 to 7?
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. The next person I see for our boards and committees, I wanted to welcome Carl Roth. I did see you over there. I'm sorry. Come on up.
I wasn't hiding too much. Carl Roth, 8031 Island Drive, Port Richey. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Port Authority Board. Just wanted to give you guys an update on where we are. At our January meeting, we were able to have Mr. Duke and Mr. McClary attend. So we kind of gave them an update on the resiliency and restoration efforts that we're trying to move forward with the city. So I think that went pretty well. We did a follow-up with him as far as an email to let him know some additional background information, offer to meet with him to give him more detailed information, much like we had during our workshop. And also I gave him some information about Crystal River and some of the things they're doing up there, and I believe he's trying to arrange some things. So we figure once he gets settled in, he'll be ready to go forward, but I just wanted to let you know we're ready to go when the city's ready. On the second item, on waterway safety, back in September, we had met with the chief to talk about that. He provided some recommendations as far as reaching out to some of the other law enforcement agencies on that. So at our January meeting, we decided to go ahead and move forward with that. So we're trying to arrange a workshop with the different marine agencies that are in the area. So we've already reached out to the U.S. Coast Guard, Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, Pasco County Sheriff's Office, and then Tarpon Springs, Port Richey, and Newport Richey Police Departments, all the Marine units. So we're trying to get those together to do an information sharing and also pull together some consistency on the waters in Pasco County. So we're right now coordinating with them, just trying to find out what schedules work for everybody as they go. So once we know more about a particular date, we'll let you know, but that's where we are on that item. And lastly, just wanted to point this out, had some people approach. We had some lasers being pointed into residences along the river a couple weeks ago. And one happened at my residence in particular, but also some of the neighbors. And so it was a little concerning. We suspect it was the gambling boat, but that was a concern, especially if you were a shooter or something, you think that maybe somebody's trying to target you inside your home. So I happened to file a report with the police department, but this kind of raised angst on some of the people near me that actually had the same situation. So some of our problems still exist on the river, so that's still outstanding. So just wanted to leave it with that. Any questions?
When's the next meeting? Do you guys have another one scheduled?
Well, we were kind of waiting to see
Okay.
how things progressed. The law enforcement piece, the waterway safety, and the resiliency are the two primary things that we think are most important to move forward. And we figure there's no real point in having a meeting until we can really do some things. So that's kind of where we're sitting right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much.
And that's all I think I had for boards and committees. I don't see anyone else. Show of hands. Okay. At this time, I'd like to move on and invite our city manager. Mr. Duke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a tough 4 or 5 days, 3 or 4 days. Really appreciate the city staff stepping up, taking on roles that aren't in their job description and doing everything they can to keep us moving forward. I'll get to some of the details of what we've done over the last 48 hours. Number of courtesy calls over the last couple of weeks. I won't go through all of them, but most notably, I did meet with the police union president, Nick. Had a good conversation with him. Told him we may at times be on opposite sides of the question, but I wanted to start out with a handshake, and we did that. So really good meeting with him. Also met with the PNC large customer service group, so our bank, and Jeremy is the lead with that. Met to talk over city business in general, but obviously with the events of last Thursday evening, Jeremy and his team have really stepped up Friday and Monday to lend their full support as we move forward with our finance. Finally, I did visit with Mike Carbala. He's with Pasco County, dredging expert. He and I talked dredging some, but he also offered any support the county might have, project managers, engineers, so on. So appreciate his full support. I spoke with the CRA auditor yesterday, first of all to explain our current circumstance, and got his understanding that some of our finance questions may be delayed a little bit, but had a good conversation with him about over the next couple of weeks he's going to change focus from finance to more operational stuff, clerical stuff, and make sure we're up to speed on that. To kind of bring all of you up to speed on where we've been in the last 72 hours with staff issues and staff changes. I did reach out to Pam Ziegler and ask her if she would be willing to step in and assist. She has very graciously done that. She's been with us Monday and Tuesday. Most notable, I told her, priority number one is get payroll out on time Friday. She and staff advised this evening before they left that payroll had been submitted to the bank. The bank has confirmed it. And so, everybody's worried about getting paid. As far as we can tell, that's being processed in the banking system and should be distributed on schedule. Obviously, if there's, errors in that, we'll fix those, but we're pretty comfortable that with Pam's great help and Veronica supporting and Jennifer, that payroll's been processed. So really happy about that. Kim Poblet is with our consultant accounting firm. I talked to her boss Friday. He committed a couple more days a week of her time until we get stabilized in finance. So Kim's been with us Monday and Tuesday, supporting Pam, working a lot with Veronica, and continuing to move forward on reconciliations and the October, November, December financial statements that had been in process, but really appreciate CLA's assistance in that. They freed up a bunch of her time and made her available to us. A little longer term solution, I'm happy to announce that Rachel Goslin has agreed to join us as finance director. Rachel comes to us from New Hampshire. I did have CLA vet her in terms of accounting. I can, and I did interview her, had a good sense of who she is and why she wants to come to Port Richey, but I don't speak accounting. And so I asked CLA to provide that function for us. They did vet her. They had a very strong recommendation, not only for her accounting abilities, municipal accounting, and finance director history, but also because CLA knows us. Kim has been here a lot of time. They were pretty excited about her fit for our organization, and so I was happy to hear that. That's an important part of taking on a role like that. Rachel will have some transition, as I'm intimately familiar with. She'll be moving from New Hampshire. She'll be with us on the 11th and 12th. She'll spend 2 days with us, and I've spoken with Pam. They're going to spend those 2 days together and start to get Rachel up to speed. Rachel will be with us full-time in the seat on the 22nd of March, so we're excited about having her join us. I am continuing my own internal organizational review processes, looking at people and positions, looking at making sure we've got the right skill sets matched with the right jobs. Going to spend another week or two. Circumstances of the last 3 days have kind of delayed that a little bit. I think it's still an open question if we want to discuss whether we want an outside consultant firm to come in and not only look at people and positions, but look at systems. Look at, do we have the right software? Does it do what we want it to do? Do we have the appropriate procedures? And I've talked to one consulting firm that does that. There are others, but if that's of value to us, we can go in that direction and give us a lot more information. And as you know, costs more money too. So that's an option on the table. But I'll have my own internal review wrapped up in the next week to 2 weeks and move forward from there. Public Works is working on some temporary lighting in the Cody River Landing area for this weekend's events. We've got one light tower that we own, and we'll probably have a couple more. We're still working on, what's the best location. It's kind of hard to tell because private property owners have their own lighting, and if they turn it on, the street's lit up too. If they don't turn it on, it's not. So we will try to pick the best spots, but it's going to be a guess. But we'll have some additional lighting in the Cody River area. Obviously, we've been in contact with Tony's family. I've spoken with her husband, and other staff have as well. Offered them whatever support they need. We've got some paperwork to process with insurance stuff, and we'll make sure that's done very expeditiously. But wanted to offer her family whatever support they've asked, or whatever support they would want. Being very respectful. My understanding is there will be a very small, very private celebration of Tony's life, and so there won't be much opportunity for us as her work family to join that, but our intent is to do whatever the family wants us to do, as much or as little. So, and finally, on a little lighter note, Operation Dumpster has commenced at City Hall. My department heads and I are looking through hallways and cabinets and storage spaces and offices, and if we don't have a use for it, we'll follow the procedure, but ultimately it's going in the dumpster. And appreciate Chief Robinson's inspiration and motivation for that. He took the lead and is getting stuff done in the police department. But we literally have rooms full of stuff that is obsolete, and it's got to go. I don't know how many blank cassette tapes we have. So if you're in the market for cassette tapes, let me know. We probably have scores, dozens. So we'll be moving forward on that. There is a process in the charter, and Mr. Matthew and I have reviewed that. So you will be seeing more disposal items on your agenda over the next several council meetings. There's a lot of stuff to get rid of, so we're working on that. I stand for your questions, Mr. Mayor and Council. I might be able to find 8. I know I have small cassettes, but I'll look for 8 tracks. There's an overhead projector back there. There's stuff that's been there for decades.
And Mr. McCleary, I wanted to address you and give you the floor in terms of any comments or questions for our city manager.
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay. What I'm going to do at this point then is move on to comments from myself and counsel. I'm going to start actually with Mr. McClary virtually. Any comments?
No comments at this time either. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't have any as well. This one's Earl?
I'm good as well.
Okay. So at this time, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. And I was looking for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Is there any, there's a lot of items here. Any discussion before we vote? Mr. McClary, anybody?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. At this time, we're going to move on to council business. We have department head reports. And what I'm going to do is ask that our city manager, Mr. Dute, introduce each department head with any reports that he deems necessary.
Very good. Dallas, anything to report?
I'd submitted the report. The only thing, since that's been submitted, is we've got some additional inquiries on some new residential properties that they want to try to develop off of Bay. We have to idea with the city manager about the roads that we're supposed to put in way back when that haven't, as to how we're gonna get those in to get access to 10 lots back there.
Thank you. Sean, Public Works Utilities?
Yes, sir, just to, excuse me. I'm sure some of you noticed that Brasher Park, there's a part of the playground missing. That was pointed out by a constituent, that it was broken. It turns out that it was 20 years old, so that is being shipped. I just got confirmation it should be here next month. We have done the roads in Waterfront Park. We've smoothed them and done them. We're working on, presently I'm working with the city manager and my group to redo the pier down over there by Whiskey River. Just kind of being wore out, and we're working on that. And we had several state inspections, and we've a little hiccup here or there, but we're correcting all of that, and right now we're running on all cylinders.
Thank you. Chief Policastri, you want to bring us up to date on engine repairs, in service, out of service?
Got it. The new engine had a little mechanical issue, on a power steering issue that got fixed today. It's in service now. We still have the old engine 42, not the oldest truck, the one that the new truck replaced, is in Tampa, and that's got an unknown ETA on repairs because it's a specialty set of brakes. It seems like everything on that truck has to be special ordered, and because of all the things that are going on, they can't seem to give me any kind of timeline on when they think those repairs would be on the brakes of that truck. So it's in Tampa. They're calling every day, and we follow up the call to them every day to make sure that it's happening, but we still haven't got an answer on that. As far as other than routine stuff, you're going to see us out on the water a little bit more. We got the initial phases of our Coast Guard training done with all the paid staff. So now my goal is to get the paid staff out with the part-time staff and then our volunteer crews and get that Coast Guard training a copy to them so they can all start practicing. So you're going to see us out in the water a little bit more. So, and as well as the UTV training. I got some specialty training we're going to set up for those to get our volunteers all in line with the paid crews. And the pod program, so everybody's aware. We've had a program set up and ready to go to vaccinate the employees of the city, but we have to wait for the vaccines. I just spoke to the health department yesterday, and again, we have no definitive timeline on that. They said it could be still several months because they have to get finish up. I think they said they have 35% of the elderly population vaccinated so far in Pasco. So they have to finish that, tackle doctor's offices, and then city employees would start to follow through after that. Other than that, everything's pretty much routine, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Robinson, police cars and Operation Dumpster. Friday morning, I walked through the chief's area, and he was in a Class C uniform, going through files and getting paperwork sorted and stuff that's been around for 20 years. So appreciate your efforts on that.
Yes,
Yeah, we don't have anything to surplus today. That'll change probably next meeting. But as city manager mentioned, we've been going through files that date back to 2002 and earlier that are still in our records room. And so that's about 3 different Fridays worth of work trying to get through those and make sure we don't dispose of anything that we need to keep. So on Fridays has been our days to do projects around the office, and it's a team effort. It's not obviously not just me, but it's part of getting things up and running and the way they should be. As far as the vehicles, we're still waiting on a confirmation date, but myself and Detective Howard drove to Orlando yesterday to pick up the first of the 6 vehicles and brought that back. It was a 5-hour round trip. We'll make changes in the location of that next year. But anyway, we got the one. What the holdup is right now is lights from the manufacturer. There was a second vehicle available. All they needed was the lights, and we could have had it, but COVID has changed a lot of things, and manufacturers just don't have them. It takes 10 to 14 lights per vehicle, this particular kind. So we're waiting on that, but we needed a vehicle because we have our 2 trainees. One got successfully completed the FTO program last week, and we should have the other one this week. So we need to have something for him to drive, so we had to go over and get that vehicle. When I first got here, one of the things we wanted to make sure we did was to coordinate with Pasco County, since they do have an outdoor range, to get our officers more realistic shooting experiences. So our first dates to use the range, so we have to squeeze in between them and the other agencies that use it, is March 24th and the 25th. And at that time, we have 10 agency issued rifles that we've been sitting on until we could get them qualified. And so that'll be the date, those 2 dates, they'll be qualified and be able to issue them out to the officers. We've also started, one of my main goals in training was CIT training, which is critical incident training, which allows officers the wherewithal to deal with people with mental health crisis, so that we can alleviate the use of force if necessary. And we've coordinated with both Pasco County Sheriff's Office and Hernando County Sheriff's Office to have seats in all 8 of their classes this year. So we already sent the first 2 who successfully passed the class. And during the course of the year, we should have everybody, by the end of the year, we should have everybody CIT trained. So those are some of the projects that we're working on right now. And the renovation of the communication center was started yesterday. And so it's a matter of removing consoles. We'll be redoing the flooring, painting before the new consoles and workstations are installed on the 4th and the 5th. So that's what we got going on.
Thank you, Chief. Finally, I wanted to personally thank Sal for the work that he's done in the last 72 hours. All of our job descriptions say other duties as assigned. He has exemplified that, stepped up. He has done HR stuff, he's done finance stuff, he's been a computer hacker. I think in the last 48 hours, he's now a YouTube streaming expert. Hopefully that's going out, but when you say you need good people in the trenches, that's what Sal has exemplified in some really difficult times Friday and Monday. So thank you, Sal. Anything else, Mr. Clerk, for the good of the order?
No, thank you very much. As far as the YouTube streaming, we are attempting it tonight. If it doesn't go through tonight, the meetings will be uploaded immediately after. So one way or the other, the public will get to see the meetings tonight. But streaming will be hammered out at our following meetings. Unfortunately, Ms. Hayes, she was a great employee, and she was involved in a great deal, many things, and one of that was being here all the time to make sure that those meetings got streamed. I personally will miss her, and she was a great friend, a great coworker to work with. As far as any updates, as Chief Robinson was talking about his records room, There's going to be a scheduled records destruction for the first week of May. Unfortunately, the clerks my predecessors, there's quite a few files that I have in in our vault room and stuff that date back many years, early 2000s. Some are in the late 90s that are been past due destruction. So I myself, the chief, and other department heads have been notified about this, and we're going to go forward and destroy those files, properly and whatnot, and have a set records destruction. We do have officially 3 candidates who are going to be running for our April election. My early voting materials will be coming March 5th for early voting, so anytime after that, anyone who wants to vote early for the election can do so here at City Hall. Our 3 candidates are Councilman Tom McClary, Councilman Tom Kinsella, and Seth Kapp, who's been a longtime citizen of the city. Those are our 3 candidates who will be running for the election this year. Our next meeting is, our next upcoming meeting is going to be the Citizens Advisory Committee. They're going to be meeting on Thursday, the 4th of March 4th. And that's about it that I've got right now.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that concludes our reports.
Thank you. Before we move on, did anyone on the council have any questions for any department heads? Okay.
Police Department. You put down January 2021, 5 noise complaints. Were those residential or business, or do you know right offhand?
I do not. I'll have to look into that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it? None from me, Mr. Kinsella, anything, or Mr. McClary, anything?
I do have one question. We're live, the report states we're live on the new CAD system, but minor IT issues still exist. We're fully functional, though, now on the CAD system, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that that concludes council business for item 3. We're going to move on to item 4, which is a discussion of vessel parking in a residential area. What I'd like to do is pass this to our city manager, Mr. Dute, for some maybe background information and some direction on where we stand now to kind of lead us in that discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe you've got a copy of the city code, which significantly restricts the places a person can park a boat. In reviewing with both council and city staff, the code is what it is, and I think it's in front of you for discussion because there's a couple of folks that would like for that code to change. They would like for the code to allow for boat parking in the front of residences. For what it's worth, I've received one phone call from a citizen expressing support for leaving the code like it is. I've not had any other calls to my office that would express an opinion either way. So, you know what the code is. I think the question to wrestle with for you, if you're interested in wrestling with it, is do you want to change the code? And if so, what would that look like? So, city staff has been pretty clear that we're comfortable with the code as it is. It's understandable, it's enforceable, but obviously, if it's of interest to you as a council, that's for you to wrestle with and direct us.
Thank you. So city recommendation is from staff is to not change the code.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That having been said, I did want to open for discussion amongst council, and I've heard kind of from constituents going both ways on this particular issue. So but I wanted to pass it off to the rest of the council to see the rest of the council's thoughts on this. Mr. McClary, I was going to start with you to see if you had any general comments or feeling about this issue.
Oh, you're picking on me tonight. I did also get feedback from correspondence. Mostly was to leave the code the way it is at this time and not make any major changes, but I was actually waiting for other feedback as well to see if they had heard otherwise, or what was the general feeling from constituents across the city. As I said, mine responses have been more to keep it as it is, but I was looking for other feedback as well.
Excellent. Mr. Kinsella, do you have any comments or thoughts on this issue?
What I've heard is the citizens that spoke to me like what they have. One of the things that I notice, I mean, if we're looking at to make changes or we currently have something in place, and I'm not being critical, but what we have in place is not being enforced as it is. Just driving the 1 mile down Bay Boulevard on the way here tonight, there was 10 violations that I saw, according to this. The more I thought about and earlier on, what I've heard is restricting, some boats, and then the more I thought about it is that we're gearing to a select few to allow, but then we're not going to allow other type of recreational vehicles, campers, pop-up campers, so forth. So it's almost like we're discriminating against some other families that enjoy their recreational time. So I think moving that direction, making the changes, could be opening up a can of worms. And something else too, the last couple of weeks, a neighbor of mine bought a 12-foot John boat, and the boat itself is 6 different colors. Looking at the registration, out of curiosity, it says homemade. There's a trailer. It's legal. Again, it's homemade. And I'm thinking, we're going to allow this to park in somebody's driveway because our ordinance will allow it, but it's almost like we're inviting blight, encouraging it. So I got some concerns on it.
Okay, this was my idea because I received an email from a resident that wanted it changed, and he came up with some ideas, and that resident isn't here tonight. I was kind of hoping that he'd be here to put his point of view forward. This issue comes up every couple of years. We get new people that move into the area. They don't realize that we have an ordinance against parking boats in the yard. Then they get a violation, and then they get upset, and then we hear about it here in the city council. I'm perfectly okay with the way that we have it written, because that way it doesn't discriminate against trailers and campers and things like that. And to tell you the truth, I just don't think it would make our city look all that good. So I have no objection to the way that it stands right now. I wanted it on the agenda because a resident did ask for it, and I figured he needed his time to present his argument and his reasoning behind it. Unfortunately, it does not seem to be here tonight, so I'm still okay with it, with the way that we have it written in our code. I think it makes our area look nicer. I think that we're not discriminating against anyone. We're not going to have one person say so-and-so can do it, so why can't I with my camper? I know we're a boating community, but when you own a boat, you also own the responsibility of taking care of it and providing for its care and its parking. So I'm okay with the code the way it is.
Thank you, and I was going to weigh in a little bit, and I concur with the general thoughts. I like the way that it's written, and hope that it can be continually enforced, as I think that we have probably one of the prettiest areas around in the county. And a large part of that is we do monitor and take care of our homes, and I think the city makes sure that everyone their homes look the way they're supposed to, and a big part of that is not having boats, trailers, and other things parked out in front of the houses. And I also agree that many people move into town And it's really my thought that it's their kind of obligation living or moving to a boating community to figure out where they can store their boat, put their boat, whether it's on a canal and, you know, on a lift, on the side of the house, and those are things that really the homeowner should sort out before they move or before they purchase a boat. That having been said, I'm very comfortable the way that our ordinance reads, and I don't see personally any reason to change that. That having been said, there were a couple of people that signed up, and I did want to give them the opportunity to speak on this issue, despite the fact that I don't think there's any motions at this point or any seconds to any motions. I did want to open the floor to the 2 folks that signed up and then anyone else who would like to speak to the issue. And the first person I wanted to invite up is David Mueller. Welcome. Come on up.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. Thank you for allowing me to speak. And I was one of the other ones that actually mentioned this particular issue. And the focus of this issue really wasn't so much that. It was, the point that I was trying to make was, this may be an opportunity for this city to collect money from residents as well as non-residents by establishing a parking fee or parking sticker for boats, RVs, things of that nature to be parked within the city limits at any time, and it may be an opportunity as a revenue source. City of Tarpon Springs went through and did that. I had sent you guys an opportunity to look over their boat parking permit. But one of the other things too is this is a boating community. We got crappy water in this town. A lot of residents, like myself, if I want to go on a particular day, I got to pull my boat somewhere else to go, okay? Don't have the water in my canal, and hopefully somebody can focus on that, because we've been trying forever and not getting any progress there. But some of the issues there is people need to move their boats around to be able to get it in, to be able to use it in this community. It's unfortunate that's the way it is, but I think the thought was, is there a way that we can have a win-win for the residents and the city by encouraging a parking fee and allowing boats that meet certain criteria, and some of those things were that it had to be a registered boat, licensed, current registration, current tags on the trailer. If it's an RV, that also has to have that as well. Some of the other things that I've seen around here, I've seen these construction trailers that tend to sit on property, you know, storage pods, if you will. Yeah, I don't know how that is factored into this as well, but essentially, I own a boat. I am compliant, but there are, like you said, there are right down the street, lots of them that are not. One of them is missing tonight. Same scenario. But I appreciate you guys if maybe we could have a little more consensus and get some real feedback from the community, and potentially even run a survey or something, say, hey, we'd like to, you know, try to address that and get some input. I mean, I can go either way with the thing, but I understand how it is trying to find a boat and then you get over here and then now you're in a scenario that, okay, now what am I gonna do? So I appreciate what you can do for those that aren't in the situation now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. There's one other person that signed up. Mrs. Rogers, I think she's going to yield her time. And then anyone who's not signed up that would like to address on this issue, by show of hands, welcome, come on up. And then I'll invite you next, okay?
Linda Rodriguez, 5917 Lantern Court. I don't own a boat, but I certainly don't want to walk out my house, and they're not all gorgeous boats. They're sometimes wrecks, and I don't want to walk out my house or walk my dog down the street and have to look at a wreck all the time. So I think the ordinance, whatever they call it, is in place, and I think we should maintain it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I saw another hand back here. Welcome, come on up. If you could just state your name and your address, and then your
Thomas Polino, 5812 Siesta Lane.
Okay.
Is there a thing I need to sign or anything?
This conversation is going to be later on the agenda.
No, I understand. This is what right now we're dealing with boats and driveways. No, there's an issue that we're going to come up to, and I'm going to invite you up and we'll address you, okay?
Yes.
And we certainly want you to be able to be heard and be part of the process. But for now, you know, if you're not speaking to boat trailer parking or boat parking, then we'll call you up for yours. And I thank you for letting me know that you're here, and I'll call you up when we get to your agenda.
I'm in no hurry, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it. What's that? Okay. Okay. And council, we have item number 7, which is discussion of an appeal of demolition for 5812 Siesta Lane, which I think the city has sent notice, and the homeowner is actually here. Are you guys okay taking that out of order to accommodate our citizen, our homeowner? Mr. McClary?
No objections.
Okay, so what I want to do is take up item 7, and we'll go back to the rest. And item 7 is the discussion of the appeal of the demolition for address 5812 Siesta Lane, and I'm going to pass that to Mr. Duke.
One question, a point of clarification. Did we close out this agenda item, or are we just jumping over and then we'll jump back?
We closed out, I thought we closed out the discussion of the vehicle parking or vessel parking in a residential area, unless anyone else wants to speak about that at this point. On the council. Mr. McClary, did you have anything else to add?
The only thing that did spark my interest, obviously always looking for points of revenue, is does council at this point have any interest, and I'm asking it in general as just thinking out loud as part of a monthly fee, because we do have, I have seen on numerous occasions where we have moving boxes or dumpsters or items of that nature where, it could be a revenue source for on a monthly fee, $50 a month, you get a waiver to the ordinance. And if a resident wants to pay $600 a year to park something in front of their residence, then all for them. But at least there's a caveat to that at this point. And I'm just asking in general if there's any feedback to that.
There is. I had 2 thoughts on that, if I may. The first is we're a small city, so the administration of that type of thing I think is more difficult than if you're the city of Tampa, because I don't think the revenue would outweigh any kind of benefit that we would get from that. But my personal or humble opinion is that our city, as we have fought blight, we've expended resources to fight blight. I think we've moved in the right direction, and I don't think there's any dollar amount that could come into the city that would change, at least my humble opinion, on parking stuff out in front of the house. But I wanted to pass it along to the other council members to see if they had anything. Okay.
I don't see any revenue in it.
Okay. So I don't think that there's anyone else on the council that's here tonight, at least Mr. McClary, that would be interested in exploring the cost benefit of trying to regulate, I guess, anything parked in the driveway.
Okay. No further comments.
Okay. At this, I wanted to close out the discussion on parking and move on to number 7, which is the appeal for demolition for 5812 Siesta Lane, and I'm going to pass that to our city manager, Mr. Duke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 5812 Siesta Lane it comes before you as an appeal process. The city has determined that there is justification in our code to proceed with demolition. The owner is afforded an appellate process. He has access to that appellate process, and as is his right, his appeal can be heard by you before you direct staff whether to proceed with demolition or not. There's more detail to it. I don't don't know if Mr. Matthew would like to weigh in on it, but that's why it's on your agenda. We are at that step in the process.
And what I'd like to do is be able to handle this maybe like an informal hearing procedure-wise, and have the city put on its case as to why they feel that that house on 5812 should be demolished. And then I'll allow any questions from the opposing side or the homeowner, and then I'll allow the homeowner afford him opportunity to speak as well before we start our discussion, if that's okay. Any issues with that procedure, Mr. Matthew?
Yes and no, excuse me. This isn't a quasi-judicial hearing. It's an appeal pursuant to the Structures Act of the city. This appeal before you is, the burden is upon the applicant. And it's not, you can have the building department make opening comments if you want, but the applicant is here, and just so you understand what's going on today, there's been an appellate fee paid, and these are the three issues, okay, that the appellant, Mr. Polino, has to show, one of these three, that the structure does not meet the criteria for demolition set out in 14-127, so it shouldn't be demolished. Just so everybody understands, an order for Mr. Polino to demolish the building has already been entered and the procedure followed properly. Okay, so the order is for him to demolish it. If he doesn't demolish it within 60 days, and I think that time frame passed a few days ago, then we're going to demolish it, being the city, so it's a serious matter. Secondly, if he doesn't prove that the structure doesn't meet the criteria for demolition, he would show that the structure cannot be demolished within the time specified by the order. So he says, oh, you did not give me enough time to do so. Well, that time's already gone by. If he needs more time to demolish it, it's unreasonable the time frame we set. Lastly, that the structure can be reconstructed, repaired, or restored. If the petitioner is appealing that he's going on based on this subsection, and I'm paraphrasing, he must submit at the time the appeal was filed. Okay, I presume he was so advised at that time. Of the reconstruction and repair, the list of the proposed work, the estimated cost, timetable for obtaining permits, and the timetable for completion of the work, okay, and any other documents. It's right there at number 3. So that's what's happening. And then after the appellant speaks to one of these three or all three of these issues, you will make a decision that you may affirm, reverse, or modify the order of demolition. So if you feel he didn't meet the burden, you would affirm the order of demolition. You could modify the order of demolition in terms of time, or you could reverse it and say it wasn't done properly. So with that said, I hope that gets you, so you know what you're doing here. It's a serious matter.
So procedurally, what I'd like to do is invite Mr. Polino. Come on up. Come on up to the podium.
Okay, sir.
Thank you for coming tonight. What I wanted to do is, I guess, ask you, I know you filed an appeal. I wanted you to explain to us kind of what your position was on why the house should or should not be demolished, and just kind of tell us from your end what your position is.
Yes, sir. There's been a delay on my neglect because of my condition, and it's been hospitalized. I can also bring proof of it. I had a hernia, and for the longest time it got worse. I just got another one about 2 weeks ago. However, it's not happened then. I had an operation, exploded also. They cut me wide open at this time. At the time of when I was asked to fix it within, I understood 60 days. Turned out that it was 60 days to pay fines. It was 30 days to fix it. I had it back. So, I cleaned up a lot. I've gotten compliments from the city. And I just really couldn't keep up with it at the time. However, Your Honor, I do want to keep the home, and I have made arrangements with crew, and I have the financial status to afford to pay the crew to fix the house, and I can prove legal, legitimate electricians to work with the garage, get a permit, And I want to do all the things that are correct, because Mom bought me that home, and I don't want to lose it. She'd turn over in her grave.
And I just want to interrupt you for a second, just for point of clarification, Mr. Matthew. The fact that there was an unkempt yard or stuff in the yard that shouldn't have been there and that sort of thing, under the statutes, my understanding is of really no consequence. That would fall under an ordinance violation and not necessarily the demolition code. What we're referring to is whether or not the house presents a safety or safety issues for anyone in it or the surrounding area. Is that kind of the gist of what we're referring to here?
Yes, but to be more specific, I'm sorry.
I could fill you in on more about the damage
wanna
as well, too.
Fair enough.
To be more specific, it's not 60 days to fix the place up. It's 60 days to knock it down. It's an order of demolition that he has 60 days to knock it down. He can argue that it shouldn't be demolished. And that issue, I presume, Mr. Foss will address in a few minutes, and it would be health, safety, and welfare. It's a dangerous place, okay? So the order is for him to demolish it within 60 days. He can come here and say, I need more time to demolish it, or I'm going to fix it up. Okay, so we need to know which way he was going, but that's what's going on here. It isn't a matter of, it's clean it up. These violations here are just to show the bigger picture, I presume, from the building department. But this is a demolition proceeding, not a code enforcement proceeding.
Correct. I just wanted to make sure that we ferret out that issue.
Yeah, I just wanted that to be clear for Mr. Polino.
Correct.
Your orders of demolition are in the back, okay?
Very clear, sir.
Okay. And it's my understanding just that the issue isn't the cleanliness of the yard or the house, although I'm sure that there's appreciation that you cleaned it up. The issue is whether or not it's safe. And that, I think there's an issue that our building department has. And the question is whether or not you've had, for example, licensed contractors come in and give you a quote on what it would cost to make the house from an unsafe condition to safe condition. And I think that's the crux of the issue that we're dealing with here. And if you have any evidence or testimony in terms of that, I would be very interested, and I think the council would be very interested to
To
hear.
explain the damages that I'm aware of fixing?
Correct.
Yes, sir. The roof in the garage is at half point from mid-back is not healthy as far as hazardous. It's caving in. That has to be replaced. Halfway up it doesn't. But the point is, sir, I could either demolish that garage or replace it. I have the financial status to do that within about 2 weeks.
So you have it's your position that you have means to put together a plan of action to fix whatever the safety hazards within that house to make it safe again?
All of it, sir.
Okay.
And I would not let the city down because it would let me down. You know, so I would want to make all efforts to satisfy the city and myself of keeping the home.
Okay.
So the only thing I would really ask is there's a lot of things to do. There's more to do than that. The mess, the caving in of the garage roof. The roof on the house is immaculate as far as good condition goes. The inside is a pigsty. I've had problems where I've left town, had buried mom, went out of state. Bums were living in my house, so it's gotten worse and worse. Every time I had other problems that I couldn't be there. And I don't really want to bring this up, but the police were allowing it because they were aware of it. And I didn't really appreciate that because they could have been thrown out of my house knowing that I am the one that lives there and no one else does. However, let's not get into all that. But I got a lot of damage done from what I didn't do. But I'm going to correct it for whatever the problem is. It's my house, it's my responsibility, and I will correct it according to your statuses.
Do you have any documentation from any kind of contractors or anything that you've put together to figure out what the cost is going to be and the time frame to cure any of these issues that I think are creating the safety concerns?
I had an electrician come down, professional electrician, certified. He told me that the wires have to be capped, disconnected, and he told me he will supervise it again, and I guess the city will come down and supervise it after that again to approve of what was done and be not code red, of course.
Okay. Anything, do you have anything in writing, any kind of quotes or any?
Yes, sir. I did apply with the city along with the appeal, and I put in writing the 4 or 5, maybe 6 things that I am aware of right off the bat that has to be done that probably would master the whole situation. I mean, cure the whole situation.
Okay.
But that would be in writing with my appeal, sir.
Okay.
Very clearly, right? I printed it. I don't mean to talk too close to the mic. I printed it into the paperwork.
Does anyone on council have any other questions or anything to ask?
Yeah, I have a question. On January 20th,
Yes,
the city asked for a letter of requirements to be drawn up by you, between you and the city. Did you fulfill that request by the city?
The request by the city was to appeal the chance to fix up the home, although I've had a chance already. I'm just asking for one more chance. Because at that time, I wasn't able to do it, and I tried, and I failed. But this time, I know I cannot fail. Because I already have crew lined up, and I have the financial status to afford them. And also permits the legal, the authority, certified members of inspections.
So what's the timeline that you're talking about with your crew?
I beg for 90 days. I beg for 90 days. That's I don't ask for no 6 months or 4 months. I probably could do it in 30, but I know there'd be no question after 90 days. 60 would probably be a little rough. I mean, God forbid I just get it done in 30 days. But I'm waiting on a 2-week span for my financial support that I have coming to me. It's owned by me, money, and that's gonna take about 2 more weeks. So if this could be delayed before I do it by 2 weeks, and then I would be, boom, probably done in 30 days.
A question for Mr. Foss. How many times have we allowed discontinuation?
What happened was once, in the beginning, that's where the misconfusion was, I mentioned to Your Honor.
And let me stop just for a second.
Yes,
what I
sir.
wanted to do is just kind of wrap up with him, and then I'm going to call Mr. Foss, and then we can.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more from Mr. Foss.
Me too. But I wanted to let him finish and any questions we had for him.
I'm not trying to delay the court or anything, or the meeting or anything. There was a problem getting it done. I've got a lot done. I accomplished a lot. However, it wasn't done to satisfaction for the city. Now, I have the means to satisfy myself and the city, and I really mean what I say.
Councilwoman Sorrell, anything?
Where's your paperwork? I don't see anything to support your
It was
argument.
just an appeal.
Pardon me?
An appeal.
Yeah, but you're saying that you have proof of everything that you're going to do, and I don't see anything.
In that appeal, I wrote it in the appeal. There is a spot at the letter, it's about that long, and I filled it up with a lot of things that have to be done, not alone want to be done.
Where's it at?
Some things have to be done, some things I just want to do.
I've gone through this a couple of times, I guess I haven't seen your appeal.
Yes, ma'am. If there's a.
Yeah, Councilwoman, you'll see this handwritten document, this is it?
It's page
There's no
37.
documents here, I'll read the appeal into the record. Dear City Manager, I, Thomas Polino, have made arrangements to fix up my home on Siesta Lane, Port Richey, 34668. I am giving you and the city $400 for an appeal. I plan to fix the garage, roof, paint, and keep it clean. Dated January 15th, 21, Thomas Polino. I believe this is the document he's referring to. This is the only documents made a part of the record, correct, Mr. Foss?
Yes, sir, that's the only one.
But you don't have estimates from the people that you are contracting to do this work for you?
It could be arranged for you immediately. I have contact with them all the time. The only thing is I wasn't ready to do it yet for another 2 weeks. So I just figured I needed to know what the meeting would hold as far as my options go to do it, and whatever would satisfy the city as far as information, certified personnel that you need to be aware of and going to be on this job site, and of course the permits needed to do it.
My only problem with that, Mr. Polino, is that you didn't come prepared for that tonight at this meeting. So all I have in front of me is what the city has given me, nothing that you have given me except a handwritten note.
Yeah, I just thought that would be sufficient, knowing that that's the major problem. The only other thing is the garbage thing. That's going to be, they already cleaned out, they threw away everything that meant a lot to me.
A half an inch of paper is a little hard
Right.
to see your evidence
Yes, ma'am.
to go against what they have already got against you.
I
And
presume-
it looks to me, just glancing at the, and I looked at the dates on this thing, you had a number of years in order.
Yes, ma'am. I've had a lot of hospitalization as well, and they cut me from here to here wide open. And it's been not easy to, every time.
Life is not fair, sir.
Yes, ma'am. The times I tried to make the efforts thinking that I could muscle it myself, I fell to the point where I got to stop. And then I got a lot done, and it just didn't go
Efforts were made.
as strong as I wanted it to go.
You didn't contact anyone back. That's
Well,
the
the
thing that I find.
the member on your staff was extremely rude to me. As a matter of fact, I missed the court date due to this coronavirus thing, and they keep on changing court dates. So I did FTA. He came to arrest me with the officers, and his work. I mean, this guy was just like a guy, like a demon. He said and scared the two police officers in the same car. They almost grabbed the gun and almost shot the guy. He came up and said to me, "Who is your B word now?" This is the kind of person I was working with, and this is the kind of leeway that I had, because I needed to have at least a chance to be able to communicate with somebody. He just hated me from whatever he had a reason to hate me. Maybe I said bad words to him one day.
Maybe you did, sir, but I'm still saying this is the only piece of paper that you brought as evidence that we should not continue with this
Yes, ma'am.
demolition. It's very difficult to argue against 5
Do-
years' worth of stuff.
Do we need to give you more information on detail?
You've had ample
Why?
opportunity, from what I can see with the correspondence between the city and you, and your lack of responding to the city a couple of times.
Did you
I'm sorry if
did you
thought-
say laugh at it, ma'am?
Pardon me?
Did you say I laughed at it, ma'am?
I did not say.
Oh,
you
okay.
had it. I said that you had plenty of time.
I had,
Respond to the city when the
and I
city-
mentioned that I had plenty of time.
But you did not.
Physically, I felt as though I didn't. The judge offered me more time, and I told him I didn't need more time. I should have taken his offer. He offered me more time, and I said, no, that's enough time to do it. And he said, do I need more time to do it? I said, no, Your Honor, that'd be fine. I should have taken more time to do it, being in that condition I was in. I couldn't get a chance to see Judge Gray due to the corona thing, due to reasons why. However, I did want to speak with him. I even wrote him letters. The corona thing, I have missed court. So the communication with him and I would have been maybe to settle this whole thing and had the time to do it. Couldn't get the time to see the judge, didn't have the opportunity to see the judge again. And there's plenty of efforts to try to see him, and I couldn't.
So what you're requesting from us is a little more time to come back with documents to show that you not only have the wherewithal to fix the house and a plan to fix the house, but the actual quotes from certified people to do that. That's what you're asking us
Sure.
to do today.
Now, how much time can I be given?
I'm not suggesting that'll happen. I'm just
saying.
saying, is that what you're asking us?
Yeah, because it would
Okay.
satisfy the city to know what I'm doing and how I'm doing it.
Okay.
I would think that would be better if I gave you the certified personnel to address the city.
And Mr. McClary, did you have anything for Mr. Polino?
Actually, just a more of a point of clarification as you did. So the request from Mr. Polino now is for additional time to address the issues. Now, I noticed in his appeal that he is appealing or specifically mentioned the garage in there. It's my understanding that and I believe Mr. Foss is going to get into this, but there is more outstanding than just the issue of the garage. I believe there's a water issue, a power issue, and several issues inside the building itself. Mr. Polino,
Yes, sir.
your plan to address this would include all of the items that Mr. Foss or the city has concerns with, or are you just planning on putting a plan together for the garage itself and what you noted in your appeal?
I'm sorry, sir, I'm just in a lot of pain. The last part is the last thing I didn't hear. The last 2 sentences I couldn't get because of the pain I was going through.
He wanted to know whether or not you're just aiming to fix the garage or all the other issues that were outlined by
All
the
the
city.
other issues, sir. The other issues really wouldn't require a permit. However, the garage definitely requires a permit.
Okay. Before we go any further, I'd like to address Mr. Foss.
Yes, sir.
And then we'll allow you to come back up for
Yes.
a closing statement or anything you want to say after Mr. Foss goes,
Thank you, sir.
if that's okay. Thank you. Mr. Foss, welcome.
Yes.
I had a couple questions for you before you kind of get into everything. The building as it sits now, in your, I guess, professional opinion, the way that it sits now, is it a safety hazard? And if it is, can you explain what those hazards are, like immediate safety hazard? In other words, is it going to fall down and hurt somebody? And that's kind of the issue that I wanted to just ask you, to just get to the point to see whether or not it's time sensitive or not, I guess, is one of the issues I wanted to know.
The current situation is the structure has been boarded up, so the main safety, the big issue is the roof of the garage is collapsing. That will need to be repaired. There's a window in the front that's missing. By Florida statute, for the building codes as well as minimal housing, there's certain things that are required in a home. A functioning bathroom, a functioning kitchen, a certified or enclosed envelope. The structure has to be sound. Right now, with what's going on currently, the water was shut off on this structure somewhere over in February of 2018, and he's been residing there from nearly 2 years with no water, which at that point we could put him out of the home when the water was shut off legally. The goal for the city on one thing is the home can be made habitable and repaired. However, we have a FEMA guideline that restricts how far we can go with this home financially before we have to raise the home to meet FEMA guideline. He's restricted to roughly $19,000 worth of work in that home. I don't know with what has to be done as far as electrical upgrades, plumbing upgrades, heat has to be in the home. So we need to get a engineer's structural evaluation of it. We need to get estimates from contractors of all areas. That all has to be brought into us and given to us so we have that information to see financially if we can even put this home back into a livable condition.
So, not that we have to do that, it's Mr. Polino's going to have to do this.
It's responsibility of the owner to
Correct.
do that.
Correct.
I've spoken with Mr. Polino at least once a week since the first of the last month. And on several occasions, he's been told, come in, let's sit down, let's discuss this. This is going to go to council for the appeal. Let's get a game plan together so that we know what's going on when we come to this point. And has not shown up at the office. The first time, well, take that back. The second time I've seen him in person since the 1st of January.
So what's the prejudice to the city if this were delayed? In other words, is it a safety hazard over there to where, whether it's demolished next week versus 3 weeks from now, is there any prejudice to the city if this were to be delayed, in your opinion?
Not as long as we can get a game plan together to repair it or do something. The delay wouldn't, it's not going to, no one will get hurt if they stay out of the out of that garage area. That's the main focus of where the safety hazard would be. Currently, we boarded up all doors and windows so you can't get in the garage.
I'm sorry, sir, I couldn't hear what you were saying in the last part. I couldn't hear what you were saying in the last.
The building is currently boarded up, so you can't get into the garage area, specifically where the holes in the roof and where it's collapsing.
Yes.
So the safety is there. The police department's been keeping an eye on it also for possibly any vagrants or anyone else that's been on the property, keep them away from it and out of it.
Do you have any specific requests or specific objections to his request to come back in 2 weeks with whether it be engineering plans or written documents or proof that he has the means to rehabilitate this house? Do you have any specific objection to that based on the condition of the house or any safety concerns?
If we can get a written report from an engineer for the structural stability of the home, as well as a breakdown of what he's gonna do for repair work and get it back to livable, I don't have an objection to it.
Okay. Is there any legal reason that we couldn't afford him the opportunity to do that, Mr. Matthew?
No, you have the right, the council, that you could continue this matter 2 weeks if Mr. Polino is willing to stipulate that he's proceeding under the section that he wants to fix up the house and bring estimates. I strongly recommend that as opposed to bring things of what he's going to do and be a tad more detailed than that. You're talking contractor's reports, because he'll bring things that he'll write it down on a sheet of paper. To me, that complies with that. So I would think you'd have to get from Mr. Foss something a little more detailed than, you know, bring me stuff. Okay, so estimates, appraisals, things like that. That would be my recommendation. And just so you get the bigger picture here, if you look at the package from the back, you understand what's going on here. If you look at it from the back, you see the last document is, I guess these are written red, I guess. They posted because it was unfit for habitation, so he had to leave. That's that unsafe. And as it says, this placard is not a demolition order. It's there just to give you the big picture. And if you come forward 4 pages, you'll see a letter dated December 17th, 2020 from Mr. Foss, which is required before you demolish, and there's the 7 reasons why it's being demolished pursuant to our code. You can read all 7 of those. The structure is unsanitary, so utterly fails to provide amenities. You shouldn't be living in it. It's dangerous, those kind of things. These are the standards. Mr. Foss has made that decision, and because of that, you see the page before is the notice to demolish the building, and it says this: the owner of this structure, is in the 4th paragraph, the owner shall demolish this structure and clear the entire site within 60 days. So that would be December, January, February 17th. So just so that's what's going on here. So if you, is there any problem with saying, look, come back in 2 weeks? If you agree, Mr. Polino agrees that he's going to bring appropriate documents, but I think it needs, the motion needs to be a little more than stuff I'm going to do. Bring me a list of stuff I'm going to do.
And I'm not suggesting that's what the council
No,
wants
I'm
to do.
just trying to tell you. So the short answer is you can do that, but I would strongly recommend that you make it a little more specific than a list of things to do.
But I guess before we proceed any further, we probably need more information from Mr. Foss. And I was going to allow the council to have questions and answers from
Sure.
Mr. Foss to just ferret out some more information, if that's okay, Mr. Foss. And I know that Mr. Kinsella had some questions from Mr. Foss, and I wanted to pass the.
Yeah, I was more interested in the timeline from somewhat of the beginning to where we're at today, and then how many opportunities that were given that either it was ignored or forgotten.
From the timeline we posted as an unsafe structure, I'd spoken with Mr. Polino sporadically. I requested him to come in to visit with me so that we could actually go to the home, open it up, walk through it, come up with a list of what it needs to be repaired and brought up to codes, and have not had him come in to see me at all. He can go get contractors, electricians, mechanical people, that, in order to meet what I would say satisfy what we need, I need information from those people, a licensed contractor, engineer, all that, submitted to us, to the city for review to make sure that we're gonna do what needs to be done.
And those requests,
Have not been responded, not taken care of.
how does it look like today? He mentioned that he cleaned up some of the exterior.
The exterior of the home was cleaned up by the city. We cleaned it up.
Okay.
Whatever work's been done to the home as far as clean up, boarding up, all that has been funded and paid for by the city with a lien being placed on the property to reimburse the city for what's there. We cleaned up we've given Mr. Polino before it was cleaned up. He was given the opportunity, escorted by the police department, to get any items of value that were in the exterior of the home, to gather that.
Thank you.
Anything for Mr. Foss?
So you said that there has been no water in the house for 2 years?
Correct.
So legally, it's been unsanitary and unhealthful for him to live in that house for over 2 years?
Yes.
How long has the electricity been shut off?
The electricity was turned off after we shut the building down. I had the meter pulled.
Okay.
Because when Mr. Molino was not there, within 48 hours, we had other vagrants that were in the home. So we reboarded the house and had the meter pulled off the home to get the power off.
And Mr. Polino, please don't interrupt when other people are speaking, because I kind of heard you. But I will afford you another opportunity to come speak, but please don't interrupt other people when they're speaking, okay? Thank you.
I personally feel that Mr. Polino has been given extremely a good amount of time to at least come up with something. He hasn't brought any paperwork to support it. It's not like he didn't know it was going to happen. Apparently this home has had violations going back several years, and I see no reason for an extension.
Okay. Before we discuss, Mr. Kinsella, did you have anything for Mr. Foss? Or Mr. McClary, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the audio is cutting in and out a little bit, so I'm gonna ask a question, and it's already been asked and answered. I apologize, but I'm just trying to catch up a little bit. Mr. Foss, I heard that under FEMA rules, the structure is basically capped at I think it's $18,000 or $19,000 limit as to the improvements or the repairs that can be made before the structure has to be raised. Is that correct?
Correct.
And all of the work, at least for the garage area and probably other areas of the house, would likely need permit applications by a contractor and an architect for architectural drawings to correct those issues? I'm sorry, was that
yes, they would. There will be permits required for the repair garage and possibly whatever's in the home. We need the inspections done by the trades per se to give us a list of what needs to be done in there to make it back to code.
I'm sorry, it's really broken up. Let me ask it a different way. Would the house need an architect or an engineer assessment to confirm habitability or improvements that are necessary for habitability?
Yes, it would need an engineer's evaluation.
Okay. That's all my questions, so I apologize.
Okay. Mr. Polino, if you want to come on up, I wanted to afford you another opportunity to speak before we have our discussion. So if you want, you come on up to the podium, and I wanted to give you just a few minutes.
I just wanted to clear things up for the city.
Okay.
The place is basically being condemned for the garage and they're calling some mold in the house and a lot of debris, mess. As far as the debris that it was being condemned for out front, well, the city took care of that already, sir. There's nothing, not even a dime on the ground. I lost a lot of possessions. I was basically having a yard sale, getting rid of it. I was going a little too slow for the city. But it's all gone now. The garage needs to be fixed. That's a major question. The other thing that I want to speak with the city about is to go and repair this home. I'm not living there at this time, and I was very rarely there. I was there very often, but at the same time, rarely there, because I lived with my sister. I took showers there. I ate dinner there in Hudson. The city claims, that, I needed to get the water and electric on, but I didn't really need it because I went to my sister's house. I watch the place very often because bums do slide in that house, because back in that day I was homeless as well. And my reputation of being a nice guy, they use my kindness for weakness, so I do watch my home very closely. So I was there very often. Sir, the thing is, when I go to repair this home, city wanted to know what's the thing with the water and electric, being that I'm not going to be living there. I can run a generator for electric. Can turn the water on if necessary. It's not very much money. But I mean, how am I going to get, I need the electrician to come there right away. I'm going to make those phone calls tonight to arrange him. I spoke with him about 2 months ago, maybe more or less. He told me what he's certified of, and he is willing to approach the city with it.
So specifically, let me just narrow this down. Specifically, your appeal
How do I let him in?
is that you feel that the house can be rehabilitated to where it's safe again, and
Yes.
for various reasons it wasn't done or even addressed, but now you want more time to do that.
Yes, sir.
And that was, I believe, number C under the statute, or the last part of the statute.
So
So that's really what your appeal's about, is that you wanted more time to address that specific issue.
yes, sir.
Okay.
The only other question was if I need to get more information from you, from officials, certified wise, how do I let them in there with the place boarded up?
Well, the onus, sir, is going to be on you to fix up your own property in your own house. And
Yes, sir.
It's not going to be on the city or on Mr. Foster or anybody else in the city. Okay, this is your house, your property, your responsibility.
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned, that's the way that I feel about it. But the issue that you're saying is that you want more time to do this, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And your appeal, even though it's written fairly vaguely, is, see under the statute, you wanted more time to make the general repairs all the way around.
All the way around.
Okay.
I want it to be as nice as it can possibly be.
Okay. I wanted to thank you. I was going to have you have a seat. We're going to have a discussion, and then we'll either have a motion and vote or decide what we're going to do, okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank
you,
you,
sir.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
At this time, I wanted to just open for discussion among council. You started the discussion, so I was going to pass it back over to you.
Well, from the evidence that the city has provided, it seems to me like Mr. Polino is aware of the fact that the property has been a problem for a number of years now and has not shown any intention to take care of it. In fact, the city was the one that had to remove the debris in the house, and he has not brought any kind of documentation to support his position. I see no reason for an extension.
Okay. And so your position is that you think that the city should continue upon its path with the demolition?
Exactly.
Okay. Mr. Kinsella?
And I agree.
Okay.
He needs to move forward.
Okay. I certainly, let's back up. I certainly think that the city has well met the requirements under the statute for demolition. I don't think there's any doubt about it from what I've heard from everybody and what I've read. The issue is if there's no downside to the city, whether or not it's appropriate to give him or afford him a little bit more time to finish, getting whatever he needs to get to bring back here at some point. I don't have any objection to that, but on the other hand, when I look at the statute and I look at everything that's been presented by the city and entered into the packet, I believe that it certainly would meet the criteria for a city demolition as well, all the way from the notice that was there, from what we've heard today and everything else that I've seen. That having been said, I would be more inclined to vote for demolition after he's afforded just another couple weeks to present anything that he has to us, or not even to us, but probably to Mr. Foss, to suggest that he's remedied these problems and that it's in the process of being fixed. Because I think he's just saying under C that he needed more time to finish that, even though I don't think he's entitled to that. I think that's what he was asking for. So that was my position, and I wanted to pass it to Mr. McClary to see kind of what his position was.
I agree. I think the city has done a good job of, one, identifying the issue with the structure. I have no question that the structure in its current condition should be demolished. However, I have two concerns. One, I like to give every feasible possibility of a homeowner to keep his home if he goes with the following, with certain criteria. And two, I also don't like making the decision being remotely where I haven't had, I've had some technical issues in hearing all of the testimony. So to that end, I am fine with a 2-week extension. However, the homeowner should come back in 2 weeks with a signed and sealed engineer's report detailing exactly what is required to be done to the house in order to make it habitable according to Florida building codes. And the other criteria would be the homeowner has to come back with proposals from certified contractors according to Florida building code that details the correction for anything that is noted on that engineer's letter. And all of those corrections have to come under the $18,000 or $19,000 FEMA limit. If he can't achieve that, then by Florida building code, the structure has to be raised. So I'm okay with a 2-week extension as long as we have the signed and sealed engineer's letter, and then he has the proposals from the certified contractors that are under the FEMA requirement. If he can abide by that, then we give him the 2-week extension. If he cannot, then I'm all for proceeding
You go by that for the building. Got it.
Demolition.
At this time, was there any other further discussion or any motions? Certainly this is an appeal, so I think that motions are appropriate. And I'm putting it out there to see if there's any further discussion and or motions.
Motion to deny any extension on this appeal.
Motion to deny the appeal. Okay.
Could I speak to that motion?
Yes.
Your choices are to affirm the demolition order, which is what your motion would be, to affirm the demolition order. If you can reverse it saying it shouldn't be demolished at all, or you could modify, which would be the one giving him more time. So if you want to turn down his appeal, it would be a motion to affirm the demolition order.
Okay. Motion to affirm the demolition order.
Thank you. Thank you.
Looking for a second. Not hearing a second, I think that motion dies. Are there any other motions? Let me ask you this: what if there's no motions on the table whatsoever? What happens with this thing?
No motions at all?
If nobody seconds anyone's motion on his appeal, what's the?
I think the the demolition order would stand. It says, council shall hear and consider all facts of the appeal and may affirm, reverse, or modify the order of demolition. If you don't do anything, I think the order of demolition would stand.
Okay, understood.
I prefer that you'd make a motion to affirm the demolition order.
If that's what we're gonna
If that's
do.
what you're gonna do.
Okay, I understand.
Mr. Mayor, before we, the motion dies on the table, and obviously I'm not present, has the homeowner indicated that he is willing to get the sign and seal engineer's report as well as the proposals from the certified contractors in 2 weeks for all repairs on the structure?
And Mr. McClary, if you want, he's still here. If you want to address him, I can invite him back up if you want to just.
I mean, I'm just asking that one question, so, you know, I don't know the proper procedure given the distance.
Well, I don't know if there's necessarily a proper.
Yes, you could do that. That's a fair inquiry. He's willing to come up.
Come on up. All right, Mr. McClary, he's back up at the podium, so if you wanted to ask him that.
Okay, Mr. Polino, are you willing and able to get a signed and sealed engineer's letter detailing or reviewing the structure and identifying all items that are required for repair to make it habitable, and then get the proposals from certified contractors to make those repairs within 2 weeks?
Within 2 weeks, sir, I want to satisfy the city with all information they need to know how it will be done
He's
by
asking if you can have it.
officials and certified personnel.
He's asking if you can have it in 2 weeks, if I'm just to clarify.
To clarify the officials and who would be working with me.
He's asking if you can have all those documents in 2 weeks. That's the question.
Yes, I believe so. I don't think it should take much more time than that. I mean, probably less. So hopefully 30 days would be great. 2 weeks should be enough.
I heard 2 weeks is enough.
Yes, if I could have a little more, it's always better, but.
We're not talking about fixing the whole project. We're just talking about getting a plan
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
engineer reports and what he said in place.
Understood. Just questions that I had that I couldn't understand from him and from the other part of the city here. I understood something about 1900. I didn't understand that. 1900. 19,000, yeah, something like that. What I couldn't hear was sometimes the microphones are distorting, and I'm a musician, and I have a lot of damage in my ears. It's hard to hear what was said.
He's talking about the FEMA issue. Mr. McClary, he's asking about the FEMA issue, about the value that has to be done before it has to be raised, I think is the issue he's asking about.
Well, yeah, I mean, he has to have all repairs done to the entire house according to a signed and sealed engineer's letter for under $19,000. Or else the house gets raised regardless.
I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to overtalk you, but the microphone is very distorted. I'm not gathering. In my ears, I'm not hearing you
What he's
clearly.
saying is that your engineering reports not only have to meet code to make sure it's safe, but also has to be under a certain amount by FEMA code. But if you're able to do that, then I think he's saying that he may be willing to allow you more time and then allow you
Yes.
to try and fix the house.
Yes.
I think that's what Mr. McClary was asking you if you're amenable to.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
And the answer is yes. You're agreeable to that, or no? That you're
Yes,
not?
absolutely.
Okay. Mr. McClary, did you hear him?
I heard that he's agreeable, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, I'll make a motion, and can everyone hear me clearly? Because I want to be very specific to this.
Yes.
I make a motion to grant the homeowner a 2-week extension with the requirement that he bring in 2 weeks a letter from a signed and sealed engineer detailing all repairs that must be made to the house to make it habitable, as well as proposals from certified contractors that detail the repair costs.
And is that a sufficient motion, Mr. Matthew?
I think it's understood that that's modifying the present demolition order, extending it to 2
Correct,
weeks
and
with those provisos. Yes.
And those were the terms of the modification?
That's correct, that's
Okay.
fine, yes.
There's a motion on the table. You can have a seat, Mr. Polino. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
There was one more question.
Nope.
About,
Have a seat, please.
The other side, I couldn't hear that.
I'll readdress you when we're done here, okay?
Thank you, sir.
So there's a motion, Mr. McCleary, and the motion's framed correctly and understood by city management and attorney?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
I just want to make sure the
Motion was.
motion's framed correctly.
The motion's framed correctly, I would repeat it, if you want me to. The motion is that
Okay.
we're going to modify the demolition order to be extended to 2 weeks from now. At the city council meeting, there'll be another hearing, and that the applicant, the appellant will bring a signed and sealed engineer's report outlining what needs to be done to make the house habitable, as well as proposals from certified contractors outlining the costs. And the engineer's report should address the issue if it reaches 50% of the values. It's in an AE flood zone, is pretty much what the details of that. That's how I understand the motion.
That's a motion and the second. At this time, we're going to put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, I believe motion passes 3-1 for the modification. Okay.
Mayor, if you could address to Mr. Polino that he won't be receiving any further notices, that he's to appear here regardless.
Okay, Mr. Polino, can you come on back up just for a minute? What's the date of the next meeting? You have
The
that?
9th, I believe.
One moment to confirm. Yes, the 9th will be our next meeting.
So March 9th at 7 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay. So March 9th at 7 o'clock, okay? You understand that date? You're not going to get a notice in the mail like you did for today.
I wouldn't need it.
Okay, but if you have those documents, if you would, bring those, if you can provide them to our building official before you come, it would be helpful so we can review it. But please have all those documents submitted so that we can review them and be here on March 9th at 7 o'clock.
Yes, sir. So would it be efficient to hand them to Mr. Dallas?
You want to give any of those
He
documents?
works with the city. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll see you then. You won't get another notice, so that's why I called you up here to tell you to be here on that date.
It's
So you're getting
my word to the court, yes.
Well, what we call actual notice. I'm telling you, please be here for that, okay?
Yes, on the 9th, 7 p.m.
Yes, sir.
And 2 weeks for all information on how, what, and certified.
Have it by then, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, City.
All right, that closes out item 7. I want to backpedal. We skipped over item 5 and 6, so we're going to go to 5 next, which is a discussion of vehicle speeding concerns on Old Post Road and Bay Boulevard. Mr. Duke, for any introduction?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I received a phone call concern from a resident on Old Post. I think there may be
Can I
counsel.
interrupt you just for a
Yes, sir.
second? Mr. Polino, we closed your item, so any other issues or comments, you're going to have to go outside with it, okay?
The only thing I wanted to ask you, sir, was the fact that you want this information from officials. Am I going to be allowed to let them on that property?
That's a question for Mr. Foss, and he can address you at a later date, but we have other city business, okay? Yes. No. You need to deal with that later, but we have other city business. Your business is closed for tonight, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Foss is going to go talk to you right now, if that's okay. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Dude.
So there's been resident concerns about traffic violations, speeding, excessive acceleration, and so on Old Post. Chief Robinson and I discussed that. He has marshaled additional resources, done some traffic control there, done some, may not be radar anymore, laser speed control, and his officers have even written some tickets. I think they've engaged with residents on Old Post and oriented them to what they do for enforcement, that there's been an increased Port Richey police presence in that neighborhood. So The request that I got was not in writing, it was verbal, but what can we do? Can we have more police? Can we have speed bumps? Can we change the speed limit? And so, you know, just based on that phone conversation that I had, Chief Robinson and I discussed that, and I know there's been more police presence there. Beyond that, it's more of an open discussion for you as council if you want additional actions taken. But the citizen had concerns, and we have marshaled PD resources to address those.
Are there any recommendations by city? I know you've had conversations. I didn't know if you had any recommendations for council, any actions?
Well, I think there's a couple of issues to wrestle with. One is there's more traffic with Avila Bay, with additional residents there. It's just a fact. There's going to be more people going through there. I think PD can continue to have an increased presence there to look for violators and even habitual violators. But their engagement with the residents also hopefully helps residents understand, you know, PD may determine that a person is doing 32 miles an hour, but when you watch that car, it really looks a lot faster than that. So there's often a discrepancy between what's the real speed and what's the perceived speed. So I would not bring to you a recommendation for speed bumps or changing speed limits. I think Chief Robinson has resources available that are addressing that, and I think the engagement with the folks that live in that neighborhood will continue to be effective.
Okay. So the recommendation is to continue doing what we've already done?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. With that, I wanted to open it up for any discussion amongst council.
Just out of curiosity, what, for the month of January, how many citations, warnings, so forth?
We have a traffic enforcement that's not done yet. So until that's done, I won't be able to give you any statistics. But we had one in place before he received a phone call. And so we'll be able to address the statistics hopefully by next meeting.
What'd be nice is be able to go the last couple months, you know, excuse me, November, December, January, also do it a year ago. It will show the increase in traffic, give us a better idea of you know, what we're faced with and have a better understanding what the problem is. But I really like to see the citations and being proactive and what the city has done with this problem.
Councilwoman Sorrell?
Well, I live there, so I see quite a bit of it on a regular basis, and the traffic has increased considerably since Avila Bay has opened. There's no question about that. We also have got a lot of construction traffic that has been going up and down the streets too, which also draws attention to the problems that we have there. But if you can prove to me that we're doing something about it, I'll be more than happy to support whatever the council wants to do. But it's a problem and it's a safety issue for the people that live in that area.
And my thought on this is the most data we have is from citizens that live there, their observations. Now we've had some law enforcement present a little bit more, but what we really don't have, which is probably important if we're going to talk about changing traffic patterns, speed bumps, is I think you would need probably a little more data and potentially even a traffic study at some point. It's my understanding that at some point we're going to have hopefully more discussions on adding additional road, which should hopefully help alleviate some of the traffic concerns down there. And I would think at that time it may be appropriate to do a traffic study and determine by use of experts what the best way to alleviate some of these issues are. So that was one of my thoughts. The other thought that I had, and I spoke to Mr. Robinson about this issue, It's been about 4 weeks now, several weeks since it was brought up. And Mr. Robinson Chief Robinson gently suggested that there is equipment that we may be able to utilize to kind of track the traffic pattern, the speed, the amount of vehicles, so we can begin to compile information that may be utilized to determine whether or not we do want to do something, in the future if this doesn't work out. So that was one of the things I just wanted to put out there, that I'd be much more comfortable with any kind of changes that the citizens may want if we had more information to work with.
I think we do have a traffic study on that area when we were talking about some of the changes that was going to be made in the Cody River Landing, did I say it right, area instead of the WOD. When we were doing that, I think we have a traffic study that includes that entire area right in there, not counting Avila Bay because it wasn't open at the time. But it has been said in the past that if Port Richey is going to have a red light, it's going to be at Bay Boulevard and Old Post.
Understood. So, Mr. Robinson, Chief Robinson, do we have any equipment available that we can put out there just to gain a little bit more information, to gather the amount of cars, the speed of the cars, and that sort of thing, the peak times?
Well, we were trying to get a grant in order to afford that piece of equipment. It's $4,800, and at this time the grant's not available. The Firehouse Subs grant's what we were going to use, but that's closed until April, so we want to buy that piece of equipment. We'll have to take it out of our budget.
Is there any other agency that may have a piece of equipment that we can just borrow and put out there to gather some additional information?
Yeah, it's probably not, no.
Okay. That having been said, I was just trying to figure out if there's any way that's cost prohibitive to gather information. Mr. McClary, did you have any comments or thoughts on the issue?
My personal thoughts is that the speed limit on that road should be lowered. However, it is a personal bias, and I would love to see more data to support either, lowering the speed limit or detailing if people are speeding on that road. I, like you, am struggling to try to figure out how the best economical way to gather that additional data. I would love to be reacting on data instead of personal observations or biased observations to that effect, because I know 35 miles an hour, even when properly done, looks awful fast when you're standing there. So I'm struggling as well.
May I comment on that?
Of course.
Okay, if we lower the speed limit on the road, they're not paying attention to the speed limit we have now. How is that going to increase the possibilities they're going to slow down?
Because if you're doing 45 miles an hour into 35, that's a certain fine, but if you're doing 45 and a 25, that's a lot bigger fine.
So you want to start monitoring that road all the time so that we can write more tickets on it? And that will cause people to pay attention to the speed limit because the fine is greater?
Well, if I can weigh in on that, I think just the police presence out there helps. I think
They can't hide anywhere.
I think that people are more cognizant of the traffic coming through there when they see police out there stopping people, writing tickets. That's just my personal opinion.
Then let's put a car out there that is empty and set it out there. We got a dead car back there somewhere, don't we? Okay. It worked in the city when I lived in the city. You put a car on the street and people pay attention. You don't have to have an officer in it, I guess.
Something else I would like to see, Chief, is the manpower that's being used. How much time? In other words, on Tuesday the 22nd, you had a police officer out there for 3 hours, and the activity during that 3-hour window. I think that would also help us, again, showing that the police department is being proactive. You know, we're utilizing our resources out there, but at the same time, let's take a look at what the real problem is and go from there.
And if I may just chime in real quick, one other benefit of lowering the speed limit is you can't put speed bumps on a road that does 35 miles an hour, but you can do it on a road that does 25 miles an hour. And then, you know, lowering the speed limit is the precursor to the eventual speed bumps. If we cannot seem to monitor, by a police officer or other way, you know, then that's the next step.
I don't mind laying the groundwork for that. I think the speed bumps are going to be essential at some point because there's no place for these guys to hide. They sit out there for 3 hours, everybody stops, you know? I mean, I know because I've got a lead foot and I have to behave myself on Bay Boulevard. So I understand, but if they're sitting out there where everybody can see them, they can see them for blocks. They slow down. They stop at the stop sign. But if they couldn't see you, that would be different. That would be a more realistic point of view.
So at this point, in the discussion, were there any recommendations, motions, were there any things that we were looking to do with this?
If we can lower the speed limit and get speed bumps on that street because we've lowered the speed limit, then I'm game. But just lowering the speed limit is not going to correct the problem.
And
those that violate in the first place will continue to violate.
And I just kind of humbly have a different opinion, not that I don't necessarily believe that there's a problem out there, but if we were going to take that action, I would want to hang my hat on some type of empirical data as opposed to just only citizen input, I guess. That would be my reservation.
Well, then perhaps we should pull up the old traffic study for you to get an idea of what was there just a couple of years ago.
If we have one, I think
we do have one, don't we?
Does that traffic study analyze speed? Because sometimes they're merely car counts.
No, I do believe the traffic study was strictly on the road load.
Yeah, so that's car counts.
So do we want to take this up at another time when we have some empirical data that we can look at? And
well, traffic studies are not cheap. They don't come cheap. And if we have one that probably still stands that's less than 2 years old, I think we should maybe look at that.
I agree. I think if we have already paid and we have those resources,
and it will not include the 200 people that are on Avila.
I understand that. But at least it'll give us a starting point of where we were then, and then if we determine that maybe we need more information on where we're going, at least we have a starting point.
Well, the traffic study, like Councilman McCleary said, probably does not include speeding.
Well, how about we delay this 2 weeks, get the traffic study, take a look at it, and then see where we are 2 weeks from now?
I think I'm game for that too. Any information that we can have to add to this, I think is important.
And the only other thing I was going to ask is to see if we can make any kind of effort to put the equipment out there to gain our own data.
Well, he's saying $5,000 for the possible equipment that would not be detected by the normal driver.
That would be the cost to purchase it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can have the resources to do it. I was trying to save those resources and use a grant, but since it seems to be a reoccurring problem, we can find the finances for it.
No, I understand that, but if I was hoping that if there was the county, for example, the sheriff's office that had that equipment and they weren't currently using it, that they may be nice enough to let us put it out there for a month. So I didn't know if we could at least make a couple phone calls and see if that's possible.
I can try that.
Okay.
Excellent.
I'd appreciate it.
In 2 weeks, he'll be able to come back with his information. We can get the traffic study together. We can readdress this.
And I'm not suggesting I'm opposed to doing anything, I just would want more information, I guess, is what my position is.
Such a lawyer you are.
I don't know if that's a compliment or which way to take that, but thank you.
It's all a matter of perception.
Mr. McClary, are you okay closing the discussion for now and trying to gather more information for a couple weeks out?
Yep, I'm fine with that.
Mr. Kinsella, are you okay with that idea as well?
Yes.
Okay. And I see that there's members from the general public here that I'm sure came for this specific issue. What I wanted to do, since there's no action or activity from the city and that we're gathering more information, is, as we notice the next meeting, when we actually have more information, I would want to take input from the citizens, but I wanted to gather more information before we do that, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else before we move on to the next topic?
No, sir.
Just to clarify where we're going 2 weeks from now, I guess we should know who are we asking to come up with the study. Are you aware of it, Sal?
I'll research. I know that there was traffic studies done. I know we talked about the Ritchie Road extension, and if Old Post Road was included in that,
Exactly.
and that's what I'm thinking about. And I have to see where that is, and I think it's within the past few years.
It was
So-
in with the last couple of years that we
Yeah, because
did
I know
that.
we did 2 studies, and I think one was for the Cody River Landing, that study, and then we also looked into the Ritchie Road extension and Old Post Road. So
I know we have one somewhere.
yeah. So
With everything that's going on, there's a lot going on in the city. Is a couple weeks enough time for you, do you think, to look for that?
yes, I can have that information. Either I'll have that information presented, or I'll let council know that we don't have it. So either way, you'll know.
Okay, understood. Anything else on this topic before we move on? Okay. We're going to close that item for discussion and move on to number 6 on the agenda, which is the update of Cody Avenue, and that has to do with the US 19 lane closure coming off of 19 onto Cody Avenue. And I wanted to ask Mr. Duke to introduce that, please.
Yeah, in talking to staff, there really isn't anything to update. It is still with FDOT. They are reviewing it. We haven't heard any more from them. Our intent, our hope is that they'll find it fits within their criteria, and that may be an opportunity for them to fund it. They're aware of, Mr. Foss has made me aware of, they've done traffic studies. It's on their radar. It's a issue for them, but as their wheels turn, they will get back to us and give us an answer. Yes, they're willing to do it, or no, we're on our own. So.
And would you be willing to put it back on when you deem it necessary or fit for an update?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments on that? Mr. McClary?
Nope.
Okay. We've, I think, completed item 7. We're going to move on to item 8, which is discussion of city organizational review. And this is kind of an interesting item right now. I wanted to make a suggestion that before we go into this discussion, I know that our city manager is still gauging what our employees can and can't do and shuffling some things around. My inclination was to move this to allow him, afford him a little bit more time to kind of organize before we determine whether or not, and we may have recommendations by then whether he feels that we need to hire somebody to assist with some of those issues.
I agree.
I agree 100% because you also said that the auditor is changing its focus from financial to clerical.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
And that will just supplement this.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. McClary, are you okay with that as well?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So we're going to close that item if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
And that brings us out of council business to old business, and I wanted to start with Mr. McClary.
I have nothing.
None from myself as well.
None.
I have nothing.
Okay. And outside of that, I was looking for a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.